This video is brought to you by my brand new course, RealityKit Fundamentals. Now, as you can see in the promo video, this is a very practical course. It's not like a bunch of slides or anything. I'm just going to show you how you can create real RealityKit augmented reality AR applications. And this course covers a lot. I mean, you can see right now video material. You don't really need TVs where we're going. So we have video material. I mean, we have a lot of stuff. You can see physics. I mean, how cool is this? That you can control these things and they are completely responding to you and their attributes are all physical. Gravity is taking place. I mean, you're going to learn all of these really cool things and you'll be implementing a lot of different projects. Let's go ahead and check out the course syllabus. And you can see there's a special deal going on for $89, but that's gonna expire on the 30th of December. But look at this content. I mean, we're gonna start with basic understanding of all the stuff, gestures, importing models into your world like USDZ models, occlusion, unlit material, video material, physics. That's gonna be really fun. AR coaching, measurement at image tracking. Now that is really cool. Light, reality composer, face and object anchors, and also creating a furniture store as well as persistence. And oh my god, okay, here we go, AR geo anchors also. So this course has it all. So if you ever wanted to get into RealityKit or augmented reality, this is the best course for you. So check out the special deal that is going on and make sure that you get it. Thank you so much. Now let's go back to the video. All right, everyone. So now let's go ahead and learn that how we can import USDZ models into our application. First, make sure to download the associated code, which is attached as a resource files, and go to the Start folder and run the Hello AR app. So Start folder is a starter project, which contains the handle tap function. And you can see that I have hooked up a couple of different things that we have already learned. Let's go back to the coordinator. You can see that in the coordinator, we are unwrapping the view, we are getting the tap location, all of the things that you have already discussed. And we are performing a raycast, which is going to find us a plane. So whenever we tap, we are going to perform a raycasting event and we are going to get the results. Once we get the result, what we want to do is we want to create an entity and put it on the plane. Now we have been creating model entities which were based on the box and the sphere and all that stuff, but what about an actual model? Like a nice looking USDZ file model. Luckily for us, Apple do provide you with some models that you can utilize. If you go to developer.apple.com/augmented reality/quick look, you will be able to get 3D models. You can see there are quite a number of 3D models available. I'm just going to download one of them. Let's say this one. And you can see that it is downloading the USDZ model. I'm going to go ahead and grab that file and go to my screen that contains my Xcode and just drag and drop it over there. Maybe we should rename this to something else. Instead of the gaseous trail, we will just call it simple, like a shoe. This will be our model, and this is what we will be trying to load into our application. The first thing we need to do is to create an anchor entity. Since we're working with RealityKit, you should always be working with entities. Let's go ahead and create an entity. This will be an anchor entity. And you can see that the anchor entity can be based on the plane, the target, and even the raycast result, which we already have. So we'll simply pass in the result. Next, we need to load our model entity, which in this case will be the shoe model that we have just downloaded. So I'm going to go to the coordinator and I'm going to use the model entity dot load. You can see that load is a static function and on the model entity, and you can simply pass in the name of the entity you want to load, which in this case will be a shoe. If you also take a look at the load function, which I'm going to go do it over here, load, you can see that it also throws. All right, so that's the important part, that the load function is a throwable function. So you have to make sure that you are using try to invoke it. This is going to give us some sort of an entity. Now, once we get that particular entity, we can unwrap it if you want to, that's fine, but you can see that right now we will have the entity. Now, the next step that we want to do is we already have the entity, we already have the anchor, we should try to add that particular entity to the anchor. Let's first go ahead and unwrap this also. If the entity is not loaded, then there's nothing really we can do over here. We have to say that the shoe model was not found, or whatever model that you were loading was actually not found. I can go ahead and say anchor entity dot add a child and try to add an entity. And the final thing we need to do is to add our anchor onto our scene. So we can say view.scene.add anchor and then adding the anchor. And that's it. Now we can go ahead and try to run the application. And when we tap, and our tap will cause a ray cast, which will intersect with the plane, the horizontal plane, then we will be able to add an entity at that particular place. So here we go. We're going to launch the app. Now you can see that we are trying to find the plane. When we press on it, it intersects with the plane. Our model of a shoe is added. We can go close to the model. You can see very detailed model that is provided by Apple. And we can tap on different places as soon as it intersects with the plane. Now we are adding multiple model, multiple shoes in this case. And again, you can go close and look at them. That's how they look like. And they're very, very detailed models. Now, one of the things that you may have noted is whenever I was adding a new model by tapping on the screen and intersecting with the plane, it had a little bit of a glitch, meaning a little bit of a wait time. And the reason is that we are using the model entity.load function, which is a synchronous function. So it doesn't perform work asynchronously. So we have to use an asynchronous function that will allow us to load a model in the background so we don't get that glitch. So we're going to take a look at that in the next lecture. So let's go ahead and fix the problem of loading our entities on our main thread. The first thing we need to do is we need to remove this for the time being because we will be using a different way of loading our entity. You can see that the load function comes in many different forms, and one of them actually allows you to load asynchronously. And that's the one that we are going to be using. Again, we're going to go ahead and provide the actual name of the entity that we're loading, which in this case is shoe. I will also go ahead and remove the adding the child part from here. There we go. Okay, so we're calling the load entity, we're passing in the name. In order to get that particular entity, we will have to utilize the sync function, which is going to tell us when the entity has been loaded. This is going to give us a load completion, which is something that we can check and see if the entity has been loaded or not. Inside over here, we can check using if case let failure. If there is a failure for the load completion, meaning something has gone wrong, probably the entity or the USDZ file is not present and now it's not being loaded. So over here, we can simply go ahead and print the error, which is unable to load model, and we can simply go ahead and print the error. One of the other things you can see is your sync function does return you something, but we're not capturing it. If you go and type in sync, you can see that it's returning you any cancelable, which is a publisher. So we can go ahead and capture that. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and import combine. Next, I'm going to go ahead and create cancelable, which is any cancelable, optional. And whenever we call the load async function, if you check out what it is returning, the load async function actually returns you a load request. So that is something that in order to keep our publisher alive, we're just going to go ahead and assign it to the left-hand side, to the cancelable. Other thing that we can do is once we have the load completion, and if there is no failure or anything, we can also go ahead and perform cancel, because it's done, right? I mean, we have fired the sync function and it has been loaded, so we can cancel our subscription. The receive value function is the actual function or the closure where we will actually receive the value. So we are going to receive the value in the form of an entity. And this is something that we can use to add it to our anchor. You can see that we have created the anchor. We have the entity. So the next step can be to simply use the anchor to add the entity. Let's go ahead and build it. Now, if we run our application, you will see that we don't get that small wait or pause or glitch when we are adding our USDZ models. We're going to go ahead and launch our app. It's going to try to find the plane, and as soon as we find the plane, we can tap to add our models. And now you can see that there's no glitch. We can add as many models as we like because all of this is happening in a background thread, keeping our main thread nice and free and smooth. So at this point, we have learned how to asynchronously load our USDZ models. In the next lecture, let's take a look at how we can load multiple models in our application. All right, so now let's go ahead and see that how we can load multiple models. We already have a model for shoe. That's the one that we have been using. In order to load a multiple model, we need to first go and get a different model. So again, I'm going to go back to Apple's website. And let's see over here. This teapot looks really nice, so maybe we can download that part. And I'm going to make sure that I am adding it. There we go. And now we have a teapot. Let's go and change its name to teapot, just a teapot. Perfect. Now we can go about adding this particular teapot also along with the shoe. So when we are loading an entity using the model entity.loadAsync or entity.loadAsync, you can use any one of those. I can go ahead and also call append, and I can say model entity.loadAsync. And now I can go ahead and load the teapot. All right. Now, if I build this, you can see that it builds still fine. I mean, we are loading this one and then this one, but we need to collect both of them because we're trying to load both the entities. So there is a function called collect. What it does is that it is going to collect both the shoe and the teapot, and it's going to provide us with a single stream of array of data. So that's why you can see that over here in the receive value, now it is complaining. And the reason it is complaining is that the receive value now, since we're using collect, is not a single entity, it's a stream of entity, or it's an array of entities. So that's why I'm just going to call this entities. Once we have these entities, we already have the anchor. So how about we add these entities, both of them, to the anchor. Entities.for each, and then we can say anchor dot add $0. where $0 is going to represent the entity. Now keep in mind that although we are adding an entity to the anchor, we're not really changing the position of the entity. So they may look kind of weird on top of each other and things like that. But let's go ahead and run it and give it a try. So we're going to go ahead and launch the app, and we're going to try to add an entity. And you can see that it is adding multiple entities, but now the shoe is kind of covered with the teapot. The teapot is on top of the shoe and they're not visible. So let's go ahead and fix that. So what we can do is when we are looping over the entities, we can get each entity and we can add each entity to the anchor. Nothing got changed, but this will also give us the opportunity to change the position of the entity within where it is anchoring. So we can go ahead and make sure that the entities are positioned correctly. Now I can say 0, 0, 0, which is the origin. And in this case, since I'm passing in a constant number 0, 0, 0, again, we're going to face the same exact problem, meaning two entities will have the same exact position. So one of the ways we can solve this is by changing one of these coordinates, x, y, or z. It really depends which one or how you want to place them. So I'm just going to go ahead and say 0, 0, and I'm just going to go ahead and change the x coordinate. There we go. We're going to launch the app, and as soon as I tap, I will add the teapot and the shoe, and now you can see they are side by side each other, not overlapping each other, because we have incremented the x-axis, and they look much nicer as compared to before. Now in the next lecture, we will look at how we can load entities that have animation aspects to it. In order to load a model that consists of animation, first we have to find a model that exposes animations. Luckily, if we go to the same Apple developer website or developer.apple.com augmented reality quick look, we can find a couple of different models that consist of animations. You have the HAB, some sort of an astronaut, and the lunar rover. I'm going to go ahead and download the lunar rover, and you can see it's a reality file. I'm going to go ahead and add it to my project. Let's rename this to something. Lunar rover is actually fine. Another thing you will note about this lunar rover is that it does consist of sound. So go ahead and put on your headphone or through your speaker. If you click on the reality file, you will be able to hear the sound also. All right. Okay. Now the loading part is actually pretty same. So I'm not going to load two different models because now I just want to load lunar rover. So let's go ahead and remove the actual collect as well as the append part. We're also going to simply get an entity since we're not really doing any collect part. So we're just going to get the entity. Once we get the entity, we already have the anchor. Let's go ahead and add that particular entity to the anchor. Now we will have to just change the name. Instead of shoe, we should call it lunar rover or whatever the name of our file is. Lunar rover. And that's it. Let's go ahead and build it. And now we can go ahead and try to run it to see if it actually displays according to our needs or not. Now, before running, one of the important things that you should check is that the lunar rover.reality file is actually part of the target. So make sure that checkbox is actually checked. So we're going to go ahead and launch our app. And as soon as we tap, you're going to see that it adds our rover. Now this rover is animated, and we can tap on these points to find more information about the rover. But as soon as we tap, you can see that it is adding another rover, because that's our default action, to add another of the same entity. And you can see that every single time we try to tap on a particular point of interest, it adds another entity. So now we need to do something so we only add one and only one rover. How can we do that? Well, we'll start with our receive value closure, where we're getting the entity. Once we're getting the entity, what we can do is we can give some sort of a name to it. So we can even give it to our anchor. So let's go ahead and give it a name, anchor dot name. And you can name it anything you want. So I'm just going to go ahead and say lunar rover anchor. That's a unique name for our anchor. You can also assign your anchor name over here. That is perfectly fine too. Now what we want to do is we want to check whenever we are performing a tap, we want to see if that particular anchor is already added, then we don't want to add that anchor. We can check this at many different places. Let's go ahead and check it over here. We can say view.scene.anchors, give me the first anchor where, and now we can provide some sort of a condition, dot name, anchor name, is equals to the lunar rover anchor. That's the one that we just created. If this is the case, then we will have to do something. All right. So let's first write it out correctly. We're going to use the where function. So let's go ahead and use the first, and now we can use the where clause over here. I'm not sure why it's keeping over here. Let's go ahead and check it out. There we go. Okay, so we're going to check if $0.0.name equals to lunar rover. If that is the case, if it is equal to nil, then only then you will go forward, else you will not do anything. So we will have to guard against that. Okay, so now we have made this condition, which is checking that if the lunar rover anchor, same name, is already added. If it is already added, then just don't really do anything. Then that's pretty much it. You're not supposed to be doing anything else. All right. With this code, let's go ahead and try to run it and see that if it fixes our issue or not. So we're going to go ahead and launch the app, and as soon as we tap, we can see one lunar rover. The good thing is that if we tap multiple times, since that particular anchor has already been added, you won't be able to see the more lunar rover models being added. So that's the exact behavior that we wanted. And you can see that I can now freely tap on these different points, and I can see all the details.